Who is Cincinnatus? If you haven't heard of him, he's been a respected figure in world history for millennia. Over the ages, he's been considered an outstanding example of someone who would humbly surrender power for the good of his fellow citizens. He could have ruled Rome, but instead, he decided to tend to a small farm with his family. And like I said, this has been respected for thousands of years.
The story of the heroic Cincinnatus served a useful purpose, demonstrating that a loyal citizen must place the matters of the state over his own self-interest.
But let's get right down to the bottom of this person. So his full name was Lucius Quinctus Cincinnatus, and he lived 2,500 years ago, born around 519 BCE, and this is during the last decade of the Roman kingdom. So this is really early in the history of ancient Rome, way before Julius Caesar or gladiators or anything like that. We're going to go right to 458 BCE, where Rome was under a severe military siege, and its very existence was threatened. In desperation, the Senate pleaded with a farmer named Cincinnatus to become dictator and rule the city-state and defeat Rome's enemies. And at first, Cincinnatus actually hesitated, and this says a lot about his character. He knew that if he didn't sow his crops, his family would struggle to survive, but he did see how dangerous the situation was for all of the Roman people, so he quickly made arrangements to take care of his family, and he accepted the throne. Then he proceeded to do an awesome job. In 15 days, under Cincinnatus' brilliant leadership, the Roman army defeated its enemies, and the Roman people could now live in peace and prosperity. Rather than rule Rome, or even accept the military honors that were due to him, Cincinnatus resigned, and he returned to his small farm, grateful to have been of service. And this choice to immediately resign when he could have had near absolute authority of Rome has often been cited as an example of outstanding leadership, service to the greater good, civic virtue, lack of personal ambition, and of course modesty. So about 20 years later, in 439 BCE, a revolt took place in Rome, and the Senate once again asked Cincinnatus to rule, and they wanted him to put down this revolt. Again, he was given absolute authority, and at this point he's 80 years old. But still, he puts down the revolt, and as before, he resigns his office to return to a small farm to live in peace. And this is just it's a shining example of someone who's great. And it did not go unnoticed. More than 2,000 years later, a man named George Washington would remember Cincinnatus' example in 1783, when the army wanted to make him a dictator, and instead, George Washington surrendered power to the Congress, and he returned to his farm. He could have been a king, but like Cincinnatus, he decided to do the more honorable thing. The story of Cincinnatus is a really interesting one to learn about, especially when you compare him to other leaders throughout history who are looking to grab more and more power. And it's good to see, something to contrast that with a great moral character. And not surprisingly, there's many things named after Cincinnatus today. For example, the city of Cincinnati in Ohio is named after Cincinnatus. And there's a town in New York called Cincinnatus, and the Italian community of Cincinnato. So, in a sense, his example continues to live on, and I hope you use this as a starting point to learn more about him, and I hope you enjoyed this video.